Hey, this is Kyle with Strata Cloud Accountants, and I'm going to show you a great way for your vendors to give you free money. You might be skeptical and think that that's silly. Vendors don't give away money for free. I'm going to demonstrate that they do. That way that they do it is for you to get on terms. Getting on terms basically means extending terms and not paying immediately for your product. So, for instance, you might be cash on delivery COD right now with your vendors, which means you have to pay when the product's received. But if you work with your vendors, and I'll talk about a couple of different ways, you can extend to maybe net 7, which means you don't owe until 7 days later, or net 15, you don't owe until 15 days later, maybe even net 30, so you don't owe on a bill that you received for 30 days. Why is that free money? It doesn't sound fair or doesn't make a lot of sense that vendors would give you free cash. I'm going to show an example here, and this is from our blog. And this is going to show you that it really is free money when vendors provide terms and you push to get your vendors on terms. So if we look here, and don't freak out seeing a bunch of numbers, we're going to go through it. If you look at our week -1, which is basically week -1 and week 0 are just 2 weeks that you have COD with your vendors. Say that's what you have right now. So you have revenue coming in of $5,000. You have $5,000 worth of bills that you owe to your vendor or supplier, and you have to pay them when you receive it. So at the end of your week, you have zero in cash, which obviously doesn't work. So say in that case, you've lent the company $20,000 out of your pocket, or you've gotten a loan for working capital, so you have enough money to run the business while you're paying your vendors out. So in weeks -1, week 0, you have zero cash. But in week 1, let's say that you've convinced this vendor to go net 30 terms, which means you don't owe that vendor any money on the bills for 30 days. So in week 1, when you're set up on terms with your vendor, once again, you're paying them in 30 days instead of paying them cash on delivery. You're going to have $5,000 that you're going to owe to the vendor, but you're not going to have to pay it out. But you're still going to get your weekly revenue of $5,000 like you have been for the past couple of weeks. And you're going to get $5,000 that's in your bank account. Week 2, exact same thing's going to happen. You're going to get another $5,000 in revenue. You're going to owe your vendor $5,000. So you're going to owe them 10 in total now, but you're going to have that 10 that's in your pocket because you don't have to pay them yet for 30 days. Let's skip ahead because you can kind of see the pattern here. Week 5, you get the $5,000 that come in from revenue, and you only owe $5,000 to your supplier. This negative 5,000, that's from week 1 here that you're going to have to pay. And then in week 6, you're going to owe week two's bills, and so on. So you're going to have $20,000 that you've just generated in working capital for your business that you're not going to have to pay back out because you've got vendors set on terms, or this vendor set on terms. So you've just generated $20,000 that you can now use. And you're thinking that's just a timing issue, but if you think about it, if it's always on net 30, you're always going to get to keep that $20,000. So if you lent the business money or you got a loan, you could potentially pay that loan back for the working capital because now you've generated that money in setting up terms with the vendor. So once again, it is a timing issue, but that money always stays in your pockets. So you're always going to get the revenue in the weeks that you receive it, but you're not going to have to pay your vendors for 30 days. And you're always going to be able to stagger the amounts that you pay for that week and stagger it out over time. And you're going to generate the cash in the meantime. And that cash is the cash that you're going to be able to keep in your business in perpetuity or until you change terms with the vendor. So as long as you can stay net 30 and pay the vendor for 30 days, that means that you're going to get $20,000 in this example extra in your pocket going forward. So it's super important to push your vendors to get on terms. How do you get on terms with your vendor? One, you have to ask over and over and over because they like to see a history that you've paid. But if you have terms with other vendors, you can make sure that any new vendor that comes on, you can let them know, hey, I'm already on terms, or we only offer with our other vendors net 30. Can you do net 30? So making sure to ask with new vendors, anybody who's not on terms, you're continuing to push and ask them to move on terms because they may say no at first, but eventually, if you demonstrate that you can pay, they'll extend terms out. But for instance, if you could go from net 15 to net 30 in this example we're looking at, you would generate an extra $10,000. I'm sorry, an extra $15,000 in working capital for yourself if you can move it out. So, one, ask your vendors. Two, establish a relationship. And three, you're gonna have to be like the raptor in Jurassic Park. You're gonna have to hit them hard. Ask, ask, ask. Don't stop. Keep the pressure on, and you can extend those terms out as long as they're willing to, and just make sure that you're consistent on the payments once you're on terms. Don't pay late. Make sure to honor the terms that you're on. So once again, terms are cash in your pocket if you can extend them out and use them to your advantage.